This is Orange Nation Overtime with Stephen Fonte and Paulie Sibilia.
Welcome into Orange Nation Overtime, everyone. Alongside Paulie Sibilia, I'm Stephen Fonte. It is Thursday, which means we had Adrian Autry on the Orange Nation radio show today, voice of the Orange, Matt Park. We'll get to those interviews here in a moment. One of the topics we talked about today, Paulie, was the play of Donnie Freeman this year, and it came up early in the show. We were discussing, if you were a new head coach or even this current coaching staff, who on the current team would you want back? Who's got eligibility? Donnie obviously has eligibility. I don't think he will be back, for the record. But, I think if you're a coach coming in, you see his talent. He's a borderline, pro. You would want him, you would think, on the roster. However, you look a little bit closer at his numbers this year, his performance. Last year, obviously, he missed quite a bit due to injury. This year, missed 9 games with injury, and he has struggled against the better competition. Did not play well against Duke, did not play well against Virginia, had one good half against North Carolina. What do you make of his season today?
He struggles against physical teams, but he didn't struggle against Clemson, right? They're a big physical team. They're a top team in the conference. He hasn't been consistent, and this whole team hasn't been consistent. Nate George has not been. When he plays good, the team plays good. It's just they haven't put it together where they can do it day in and day out or all together at the same time.
You look at this roster, and Nate Kings has been
good of late.
Good of late. Do you look at him now and say Nate Kings is the best player on his team? No. Still Donnie?
Because Nate Kings couldn't hit a shot to start the season.
Yeah. Okay, that's fair. He's been very good of late, though.
Yes.
Obviously, to the point where they gave him the ball with the game on the line against SMU.
He's improving while others are regressing, it feels like.
All right, let's get to our interview with the head coach of the Orange, Adrian Autry, and we let him off by asking for his thoughts on the previous game against Duke and what went wrong there at the end of the first half. It's a 5-point game. All of a sudden, Duke goes on that 11-0 run, makes it 16 by halftime, and then things went downhill from there.
I thought we fought, for those up until those last 2-3 minutes, and Duke is a team that plays in spurts, and they finished the half on a really high note, and we couldn't recover from there, and that was pretty much the game. We would have liked it to be more competitive, but unfortunately that didn't happen. But they're a very good team. I think they've lost won a game or 2 games in the last 2 years in league play. So, like I told our guys, that's a very good team, and we disappointed in our performance, and we would have liked to be more competitive and try to win the game, but that didn't happen. We just got to move forward and get ready for Saturday.
Coach, you kind of touched on it right there, but I was curious to hear what your message was to the team afterwards. And I know you had a day off, scheduled day off on Tuesday, and then got back to practice yesterday. What has been your message, both after the game and at practice yesterday for the guys to kind of, reset their focus?
We had to summarize last week of what we did. I mean, again, and every team has to do it, but again, we beat 2 teams that are potentially tournament teams at home. We had 2 NCAA tournament team games, and we had to battle. We went to overtime with Cal, and then we had to turn around and claw our way and fight our way back against SMU, and then turn back and turn around the next day and go down there, which every team has that turn, and we've had it twice when we went down to play North Carolina and Duke, and those were those are tough situations, and everyone has to do it. We just didn't. I thought we fought, that first half, and then we kind of ran out of gas. And again, in that 3-game stretch, we had 3 NCAA tournament teams. We went 2-1, and now that's how we're going to piece this up and finish out this season. We got 4 more games that are all 3 quad 1 opportunities, and another home game against a good Pittsburgh team. And so we got to take that week by week. We'll have more time to prepare, and I think that'll be advantageous for us.
Coach, in the second half there, what can you do to maybe stop things like that from getting that far out of hand
Nothing.
in a game like that?
You can't do nothing. There's no 20-point play. There's no 20-point timeout, 15-point timeout. It's nothing but try to encourage your guys to keep fighting. and try to, just try to find some fight. And again, as a coach, when you get in those situations, you really just encourage your guys to just to fight, keep fighting, and try to get on the run, try to switch up defenses here and there. Every time we switched it up, they had an answer for it. It was just one of those games, and for us, you guys got to move on. Again, we got a great opportunity coming against a really good North Carolina team. Acquire one opportunity, and that's how that's the only thing that you can do about that last game.
Donnie has struggled against some of the better teams this year. Had that one really good half against North Carolina, but struggled against Virginia, struggled against Duke. Is it because he's at the top of the scouting report? Is it a physicality thing? How do you get Donnie going against some of the better competition that you're facing?
Well, I think we got to try to move the ball around a little bit better and try to use his quickness to his advantage, because those are bigger physical teams. I think we got to give him the ball in different places on the floor, and then we got to be able to make quicker decisions and things like that. But it's really movement and trying to get the ball to him in different places on the floor that works to his advantage.
2 years ago, you guys lost by 36 at UNC, and then they came here to the Dome and you knocked them off. Do you draw upon that experience at all, and do you remind the players, obviously, aside from JJ, the players weren't here, but do you remind them at all of, hey, listen, it can happen where you have trouble against, and you laid out some of the reasons why you had trouble with Carolina the first time around. Now they're coming to your building. They're a little banged up. It can happen. Do you remind them at all of what happened 2 years ago?
No, we talk about, if you look at the landscape of college basketball, in particular this last week, obviously, blowouts, you've seen a lot of big losses, and that's part of college basketball. That's part of basketball, period. Like, you have those days, and that's what you really talk about. We would love to, not be a part of that, but that happens. It was several big losses across college basketball. What I mean by a loss, 20 points, 25 points, whatever the case may be. So that happens. You see it at the highest level too, 30-point losses. You just got to be able to bounce back. Everything is about recovery, and that's what we talk about. And yes, we can pull from those experiences. Yes, we will, talk about that. And it happens all the time. You lose a game, on the road, and then you come back and you play back. You're back in your home crowd, and obviously a great opportunity for us to play on a Saturday against Carolina at home. The guys will be excited for that. We're excited for that. And, the only thing that matters is the next game now. We can't change anything in the past. So it's really about moving forward.
Can you draw anything off of the second half you guys had at North Carolina?
Yeah, I thought we did some. I think we've drawn from that even in our last two wins last week. Take away the Duke game. We did learn some stuff of some things that we could do better, things that kind of worked and impacted us. So we'll continue to work on those and use those going forward.
And along those lines, Coach, just that first meeting in general, when you look at North Carolina, and they're a little bit different this week, as we were discussing, as you were popping on, they're dealing with a couple of injuries, which I know you're fully aware of. But in that first meeting, what stood out to you about Carolina, and maybe what did they do well in that game that you guys are going to have to try to neutralize this time around?
Well, I thought their physicality on the perimeter was really physicality, period. I thought they really made it tough for us to get to our spots, running to the ball, using ball screens. I thought they did a really good job of steering us off our ball screens. And then, Vesta and Caleb Wilson, that's just, I thought they just had some really big moments for them. Caleb, some of that stuff you can't guard it. He just made big time moves, big time defensive moves, rebounding, whatever you call it. Like, he fell one time and we tried to get the ball on him. He just popped up with one hand and caught it in the transition. Investor, is a handful, 7 feet. Could shoot it, pass it. They did a good job of getting those guys the ball. They made some plays like that, but I was impressed with their physicality, their rebounding. Obviously, Carolina's always a good rebounding team. Their physicality and rebounding, I thought really that's what stood out to us. And I thought in the second half, when we, made a run, I thought we got a little bit more comfortable. We did a little bit more things to loosen them up, to get ourselves going.
You just brought up their two top scorers who they've missed the last couple of games. Both have missed the games after the Miami one. That's where Caleb Wilson got hurt. Actually played in the second half of that game. X-rays were negative, and then afterwards they saw the fracture in his left hand, and so he's been out since. WSYR similarly has been dealing with an illness and an injury. We don't know the status of either guy going into Saturday. How do things change? And what have you noticed, I guess, about them the last two games? How do things change for that team when they're not on the floor?
Well, you could just look at the results, man. I mean, big time. I mean, again, I think they account for more than half of their rebounds, points, everything. So those are two big blows for them if they don't have those guys. But, I thought the guys that they still got really good players there, Trimble and, the freshman Dixon. And, they got guys that can, shoot the ball. And I thought Zayden High has had some big games for them since those guys have been down, and Stevenson. So they still got really good players. They're just a little different. But you talk about missing, they're probably missing, two, big, NBA players, to be honest with you. That's what they're missing right there. And that's a lot, to try to count at one time.
Coach, how's the morale of the team been this week at practice?
We've had a great practice, great energy. The one thing I keep saying that these guys have not quit. They understand the opportunity, and we talk about it. It's some team somewhere in our same situation that has that's going to make this run. Right, like that's what we're trying to be, that team that makes the run. Again, we got 3 quad one opportunities left on our schedule, which if if you're in our situation, that's all you can ask for. So these guys are excited. The coaching staff is excited to be able to try to finish this thing out the way we want it to finish out, and then keep moving forward. We're just going to keep our heads down and keep going because again, this is you start to look at the back end of all of these schedules. Some people got a lot of tough schedules ahead, and I think we have great opportunities. Some people don't have that opportunity. So you can't focus on it except just focus on one game at a time. But we got great opportunity, and that's all we're talking about is being able to have the opportunity. And, we had a very spirited practice yesterday. The guys are looking forward to it. This group is resilient, and they're going to keep fighting. We got a chance, and we still got to finish out this season, and then we gonna pick our heads up, and then we'll go to the ACC tournament and see what happens.
Coach, last one for you. There's going to be a special ceremony inside the Dome on Saturday. I know you're going to be busy, but at halftime, they're sending Jim Lee's jersey and Rudy Hackett's jersey up to the rafters. And when I know that you've been in and around Syracuse basketball for a really long time. When you look at that 1975 team and those two guys in particular, it almost seems like that team and those guys helped lay the foundation for the next 50 years of Syracuse basketball. Just wanted to get your thoughts on those two guys. Finally being honored seems a long time overdue, but for them to get their rightful place up there in the rafters.
Yeah, I agree with you, Steve. I had a chance, I had a chance to really speak more frequently with Jim Lee, and obviously I had a chance to meet Rudy, and two great players, two great ambassadors of that orange standard that we talk about. I think those guys are the guys that obviously are part of that. They've been very supportive, and I've talked to them a lot about that season. And I think they had one of those little droughts, and then they made that run as well. So again, I'm just very happy and honored that they're being honored and their jersey being retired, and they deserve it.
Adrian Autry joins us at 1 o'clock every Thursday on the Orange Nation radio show. We closed out that interview discussing the 1975 team. And, when you look back on the history of Syracuse basketball and back on the last 50 years, that team really did lay the foundation for everything that came after it, right? They put Syracuse basketball on the map. Roy Danforth, of course, left. Jim Boeheim took over and then elevated the program even further. But without that 75 team, without that Final Four appearance, you do wonder if Syracuse basketball turns into Syracuse basketball.
Right, and it also shows you where the program went from there, because Tulane was a better job that Roy Danforth left for. Yeah, they were the shoulders that were stood upon in order to get Syracuse where we want them to be again right now.
And again, there will be a halftime ceremony. The jerseys of Jim Lee and Rudy Hackett will be raised to the rafters on Saturday during halftime of the Syracuse, North Carolina game. And again, shameless plug, we've got our pregame show coming up 12:30 to 1 o'clock from inside the Dome on News Channel 9 on Saturday. We will have a feature. I talked with both Jim Lee and Rudy Hackett earlier in the week. We looked back on that North Carolina game, the regional semifinal, where they win it in the closing seconds on a Jim Lee jumper. That, again, without that win, without that run, you do wonder if Syracuse basketball becomes Syracuse basketball. Again, 12:30 to 1 o'clock. Join us for that pregame show on Saturday. We also had the voice of the Orange, Matt Park, on our show today, and we led him off by asking him about the beginning of the season, the Houston game, the Kansas game, the Tennessee game. You did all that without Donnie. Those games were closer. In the case of Tennessee, you won the game. And now we've seen some non-competitive games of late. North Carolina, even though they made a run late. And of course, the Duke game, losing by 37 on Monday. We asked Matt Park for his thoughts on why that is, where they were to where they are now.
Some days you have it, some days you don't. And the teams that have it the best, the most consistently are the ones that win. That's why they play the games. I think the alarming thing really is they played pretty well in that stretch without Donnie Freeman, who we all would, I guess there's an argument to be made now that Nate Kings is a more consistent contributor. But Donnie Freeman, for all intents and purposes, is the best player and the best NBA prospect right now, pro prospect, let's put it that way. And they played without him and, showed, their top end performance over that period was better than what we've seen in recent games here. I think a lot's been made, and probably justifiably, of the fact they've been buried on the road against two good teams. North Carolina's good, Duke is really good, and it's been an eyesore. There's no way around it. I tend to think this is true in all things. You're never as good as you look on your best day or as bad as you look on your worst day. You're somewhere in between, and I think this team has shown a great degree of variation.
Is it fair to just ignore the SMU and Cal games? Did the Duke game just completely wash those away?
I wouldn't ignore them. I mean, again, we all know the math here about what is in terms of making the tournament and all that and how long a shot it is. So for that, they didn't really help you that much. But you came back and you won games at home against two teams that are in the middle of the pack or the lower middle of the pack in the conference, and going on the road against a Duke team that may play for the national championship. It's just a totally different realm, So why? To me, the results there, win and loss, are about as expected. I think they were expected to beat Cal. SMU was kind of a toss-up, or maybe a little worse, and they ended up winning that game. And, going to Duke, they were a huge underdog and could play Duke 10 more times and probably might not win any of them. So the fact that it played out that way, to me, is not a surprise.
You brought up the name Donnie Freeman. When you look at his season, how do you kind of assess what Donnie has been for this team this year? It's been kind of mixed reviews, I would say, up and down. What do you say?
Yeah, I mean, Donnie's got a lot to offer. I think it has shown that he's got a long way to go to be where he wants to be. Let's just say this in a blanket statement related to past good players and the next wave of good players and what have you. It's really hard to make the NBA. To make it for a day, you're pretty good. And to sustain it for any period of time is really impressive. And what I'm seeing from Donnie right now is a guy who may be a pro or an NBA player someday, but right now is showing he's a ways off of that. And that's fine. He's a sophomore in college. He's got time to grow into it, and hopefully it comes from him someday. But I would think if he's truly draft worthy or what have you this time around, he wouldn't have the ball taken away from him by guards. And that's happening here and now. He has a lot of pressure on him, I think. I think he feels it. I think one of the thoughts about having him come in off the bench that one time was, hey, we don't all have to defer to Donnie at the start of the game. Let's kind of get things rolling and then see how he mixes in. He's not necessarily a fast starter. but he's still at this level, can be and is a very good player. I think he brings a lot to the table. He's got a lot of strengths and a lot of skills, room to grow and develop, obviously. And that's why I think you see some fluctuation. Cameron Boozer is on a different level, and that kind of matchup is going to be a problem. And it's not just for Donnie; it's for everybody that's played Cameron Boozer this year. So I think a lot's expected of Donnie, that because he is so highly thought of and has the background and the high recruiting ranking and all that he's supposed to be some all-conference stud in his sophomore year, and it looks like he's just off that right now.
I'm going to ask you about another individual player, Nathan George. Obviously there's some games left to be played, but a lot of people are looking forward to next season. Regardless of who the leader of the program is next season, would you want Nathan George back?
That's going to be a decision for the coaches, be they existing, internal, external, what have you. Again, he's got pedigree, and you can see the potential on the top end. I don't know that he benefits, from moving on or, being dismissed. It's kind of like, if the point guard is the quarterback on a basketball team, it's like putting yourself in position of these people we talk about with Sam Darnold and Hurts, and you have a different offensive coordinator every year for 8 years. It's not putting yourself in position to succeed, because I think that's what we have to. If you have to look at what did George, what's his step back, if any, from last year? How did he lead the conference in assists last year on a just okay team, if that, maybe not a great team, to this year should be on theoretically a better team, and he doesn't have quite the same numbers. Then does it have to do with the style of offense or his approach, or he's had a slump or that type of thing? So I think the new coach has to decide, if there is a new coach, or if it's the current coaching staff, whatever. You got to decide, does this person fit what we want to do? I don't think he's earned a boot, to move on from him. I think, he may have been a reach in the portal, maybe, but it's hard to say. We talked about this off the air before. You're lying to yourself. If you didn't think you wanted the conference leader in assists, it was all ACC and from Toronto, you didn't want him coming in, you're lying to yourself. So if you're going to claim now, hey, this didn't work out because he's not Sherman Douglas, well, it's just human performance. It's the nature of the beast. I think 9 out of 10 people evaluating the same situation, if they had the opportunity to bring Nathan George in, would have done it.
You use the quarterback comparison, but he tends to make Brett Favre type decisions when he is actually Sam Darnold. It's kind of head scratching.
I think you're on. Yeah, and how and why? I mean, how many times a game do we go? Right, and it happens, and I how you coach that out of a guy, I don't know. It's not from a lack of trying. The thing they've worked on with Nathan George, and I think this has been publicized, is, and this really is probably true for all the guys, but let's play it snappier. Let's make the decisions quicker. When right, wrong, or indifferent, at least be decisive. When you're coming down the floor and you get to that free throw line, you got to know what you're doing with it. And the intended recipient of the pass needs to be there and locked in and make eye contact. We can't be just just because William Kyle, or even Soiree for that matter, have extraordinary reach and leaping ability, Donnie Freeman, just because that works here and there, we can't be willy-nilly just throwing the ball around the yard. And then there are those head scratchers when it's a pass, bounced off somebody's shins or something to that effect. So it happens. He's trying like heck, he's doing the best he can. And is he going to be all conference this year? No, he's not. And it's the way it goes. It's just the hand they were dealt with. And I think they're trying to improve it over time. And what you see is what you get.
This is obviously a time of transition up there at the university. New chancellor, new AD coming in, potentially a new head basketball coach. Do you have a feel for the timeline with a chancellor and with a new AD?
I don't specifically, other than to say, I think you can be constantly working on this. I think the chancellor part of it, and this is with no internal knowledge, really. Nobody said anything to me, and I haven't asked. Just because it hasn't been publicized doesn't mean that they aren't really close to the end of that. I'm sure they're closer to the end than is publicly known. Then the athletic director part of it, you can get on that right now. And a number of the candidates, we know there's one candidate who's on staff right now, at least one, and there are other candidates that aren't ADs at other places, so they don't have quite the same extraction, in terms of having to tie up affairs at another place. They all have other jobs, of course, but you can start working on their ideas and identifying that and talk to people about who they, what they think of the basketball program and what that's all part of I guarantee you that's part of getting to know somebody as a prospective AD. What do you think's going on here, football and basketball? What's your overall observation of Syracuse's position in this whole thing? What's your intention of the direction, and what are your feelings? That's how you decide on who you hire for that position. And so that's starting the ball rolling already on an evaluation of this basketball season, if and when a change gets made and that type of thing, and then how they go from there.
That was the voice of the Orange, Matt Park. And again, as Adrian Autry said earlier in the show, they've got some opportunities left. 4 games left. 3 of them are quad 1 opportunities, and then Pittsburgh to close out the year. And all they can do is keep playing and until they have no more games to play. And you see what can happen. And you hope this team can go on a run.
All right, Steve. Today seems like a day you would celebrate because you have an old man palate. National Chocolate Mint Day, or Mint Chocolate Chip Ice Cream Day.
Interesting.
Do you like that?
I'm okay with it. I don't love chocolate. We've talked about this before. I do like mint. If I could have mint ice cream without the chocolate chips, I would sign up for that. It'd be like
you're eating toothpaste ice cream.
No, have you ever had the Shamrock Shake from McDonald's?
Oh yeah, that's too
what that
strong.
is. No,
that is like eating AIM.
Oh, you don't like it?
No, I don't. I could maybe get through 2 sips of it and be like, okay, that's good. But then it's literally like you're doing peppermint schnapps.
All right. That's a fair point, but that's the flavor that I like. I don't necessarily need the chocolate. I like the mint.
Oh yeah, I was. Can I get the Colgate ice cream? Maybe that's why you don't have. Maybe that's why you don't have cavities, because your parents gave you ice cream made of toothpaste.
So I don't know why I share these things with you, because you just end up making fun of me, but I do like black raspberry, which you tell me is an old person's flavor, and I do like butterscotch, which you tell me is an old person's flavor. So
do you have Listerine? I would like a Listerine ice cream. That'd be great.
All right. So today is Mint Chocolate Chip Day.
Yeah.
Okay. Good to know. All right. Thank you. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. For Paulie, I'm Steve. We'll talk to you again tomorrow, everybody.
Download the WSYR Plus app on your TV to stream News Channel 9 for free. Just go to your smart TV, search WSYR Plus in the App Store, and download to start streaming today.